Welcome to the Chamber Leadership Alliance and today's Chamber Leadership Development Program training.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Akriti Rana, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm the program manager for the Chamber Leadership Alliance, and today I would like to welcome you all to the Chamber Leadership Development Program on Sustainability and Administration. Today's topic is your organizational DNA. In this session, we will focus on making sure you have the organizational foundation in place to create a solid organizational blueprint. I would like to thank our incredible partners at Wells Fargo for the support of this program today. Before I welcome our expert for discussion today, I would like to mention a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and all CLDP presentations will be uploaded on the CLA website after this webinar series on sustainability and administration ends on November 17th. We encourage you all to share the recordings and presentations with your fellow chamber leadership. I would also like to inform all our participants today that the presentations and videos of our previous training pods have been uploaded on the CLA website. Please be sure to visit chamberleadershipalliance.org to access them. I would also like to inform you all to use the chat and Q&A function on Zoom for any questions. These questions will be answered during the program. Thank you all for those who filled out the pre-training survey for today's program. Please be sure to fill out the post-training survey as well, as which you will all receive in your email. Lastly, I would like to thank, excuse me, I would like to welcome you all to join us at the CLA Coffee Connection, which is an optional 30 minutes networking event at the conclusion of the third training of this pod on November 17th. This networking event is designed for you to meet other chamber leaders and discuss what you have learned during the program. The link for registration has been shared in the chat box. Now, I'd like to welcome our expert for the day, Ms. Carrie Balliet. Carrie's calling is to help people connect with the world around them through personal authenticity. She works with clients to transform themselves from inside out, giving them the opportunity to live a more meaningful, joyful, authentic lives so they can achieve their dreams. After spending 35 years in corporate operations and business management, leading large teams through many changes and reorganizations, she found herself transitioned out of what she thought was her dream job. It is through these experiences that Carrie's own transformational journey began. Her need to take a deep dive into her own internal operating system so that she could find her authentic self instead of being the person she thought she needed to be inspired her to become a transformational coach. In 2019, she received her Transformational Leadership Certificate and ACC Transformational Coaching Accreditation. Carrie, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Akriti. I appreciate it. I am very, very happy to be here. Happy to see so many people around the country, California, Minneapolis, New York, Boston, Wisconsin, woohoo. All right, are we ready for me to share my screen, Akriti? Yes?
Yes, we are. Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, let me share my screen. Get this up here. Let's get into slideshow mode so we can get started. Come on. There we go. Okay, awesome. All right. So welcome everyone. Very excited to be here with you today. As Akriti mentioned, I am a transformational coach. I am located here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I work with companies to help them develop effective leaders. I also work with individuals to help them tap into their highest potential. And as Akriti said in her introduction, I work with people and help them figure things from the inside out so that they can understand what's going on inside so that they can manifest what they want externally. So I'm very excited to be here with you today to talk about organizational DNA and creating that solid foundation for your chambers. As Akriti said, I do want this to be an interactive webinar. So please use the chat box and feel free to put your messages in the chat box. I'll actually be asking some questions for you folks to put in the chat box. Use the Q&A function, whatever you're comfortable with, so that we can have an interactive session today. I would like to be able to answer your questions as we're going along. So, all right. To get us started, I actually thought it would be kind of fun to do a little bit of a grounding exercise. Let's see, it is a little after 10 o'clock here in Wisconsin, which means on the East Coast, it's a little after 11. And let's see, on the West Coast, it's a little early. But I thought maybe a grounding exercise for all of us, just to bring our energy into the room, to bring us into the present moment. Maybe you've had a busy morning. Maybe you're trying to get the kids settled, or maybe you're trying to get the dog settled, or maybe you're trying to get yourself settled. So I'd like to invite you, if you are able, and if you're in a safe space, to close your eyes. I invite you to close your eyes for just a moment. We're going to do 2 grounding exercises together. And if you're not able to be in a safe space where you can close your eyes, that's okay. You can still imagine yourself in the scenarios that I'm going to walk us through right now. So, so with your eyes closed, let's have you imagine the number 8 in your mind. And I'd like for you to take that number 8 and flip it on its side. And when it flips on its side, it is known as a litmus. And imagine that you're putting that number 8 on its side over your eyes. So it's going over your eye socket, and the intersection of that 8 is going over the bridge of your nose. And we're going to follow that figure 8 with our eyes. While our eyes are closed, in our minds, we're going to follow that figure 8. And we're going to start up in the top left-hand corner of your eye socket by your eyebrow. And we're going to follow that figure 8 down to the lower left corner of your eye. We're going to come around and up around the bridge of your nose. We're going to follow that figure 8 up around to the top right of your eye, and now the bottom right of your eye, and come around across the bridge of your nose and up around to the left corner of your eye, down to the lower left corner of your eye, back up and around across the bridge of your nose, to the top right corner of your eye, the bottom right corner of your eye, across the bridge of your nose, and back around to the top left of your eye. And now we're going to reverse that. So we're going to go from the top left, we're going to come down and run across the bridge of your nose to the bottom right of your eye, up to the top right of your eye, across the bridge of your nose, and down to the left corner of your eye, back up around to the right corner of your eye, across the bridge of your nose, back down to the right corner of your eye, up to the right, back across the bridge of your nose to the bottom left and upper left. Okay, great job. And with your eyes closed, we're going to do 2 collective breaths together. And this is a 5-breath exercise. So we'll breathe in for 5, we'll hold for 5, and we'll exhale for 5. And I'll count this out for us. We'll do this 2 times. You can count in your head, but I'll count it out loud for us, okay? Ready? So we're going to breathe in for 2, 3, 4, 5, hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, excellent. All right, open your eyes. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me in those exercises. I use those exercises quite a lot for myself and also with my clients. It's a great way to get yourself centered and grounded back into the now moment. So often I find myself sometimes where my head is spinning or I'm feeling anxious or overwhelmed. And if I just take a moment and do the eye roll exercise and do a couple of 5 breaths, I find myself, it just sort of calms the central nervous system of the body, gets me back in the moment, and allows me to kind of reset myself. So I hope you found that helpful. All right, so let's dive into organizational DNA. We're going to dive in by talking about what is organizational DNA. So, when I thought about this presentation and where I wanted to go, especially as a transformational coach, I thought, okay, well, what does organizational DNA mean? So, of course, I looked up the definition. And so the organizational DNA is defined as the underlying factors that together define an organization's personality and help explain its performance. And then I started thinking about and I started thinking about the word DNA, right? Because DNA, for me, has a visualization. Like when I see the word DNA, I visually get like a metaphoric meaning to the word. And that's because DNA is actually a metaphor that's based on the biological term for DNA. And so if you look at the biological term for DNA, it is the molecule that encodes the genetic instructions in living organisms. So everything that a cell is and does comes from its DNA. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. So what does that mean for an organization, right? And especially, what does that mean for you, for your chamber? So let's think about it in terms of your chamber, okay? So your chamber's personality, all right, your organizational DNA is related to its culture, right? Because it's everything that is and does about your chamber comes from its DNA. And the first thing I think about is culture. And it's not the aspirational culture. So it's not the culture that you think that you want your chamber to be. It's actually the legacy culture that emerges from the behaviors and the beliefs of all of the people that comprise your chamber. So that would be your workforce, that would be your employees, your volunteers, your board members, all of those people that make up your chamber. That's part of your organizational DNA. And so that's what we're going to focus on today, is the internal workings of your chamber. All right, I want to get my chat box up here because I just want to have that up there so I can keep track of that. All right. So, sorry about that. Okay, so why is it important? So why is organizational DNA important? Well, it affects how you operate and externally with your customers, as well as internally within your organization, so within your chamber, right? So think about in today's world, we all talk about being a digital leader, right? Digital, digital, digital. We want to be a digital leader. What does being a digital leader really mean for us? So when I think about it, and there's a great book out there from Amazon called Think Like Amazon, and it talks about being a digital leader. And what does that mean? Well, being a digital leader means having speed and agility. And when I think about speed and agility, I think about having the ability to pivot and move quickly externally with your customers, but also internally within your chamber so that you can service your external customers to the best of your abilities. Okay, so when we think about organizational DNA, we think about the external, which are your chamber members, and then internally within your organization, that's everybody that comprises the internal part of your organization. All right, so we're going to talk externally focused for a moment. I want to talk about that because being externally focused and serving your customers is extremely important, especially today, right? Because we're in such a competitive marketplace. And so we want, as chambers, we want to make sure that we are giving our customers the most fabulous experience that you can, right? You want to give them the most value for their money. You want them to feel like they are important, that they belong, right? And so And so that's where all of the external focus within organizations lie, right? You're looking for new and innovative ways to add value and serve your chamber members, especially now that we've moved most of our stuff to digital platforms. So we're trying to figure out, wow, how do we create learning opportunities in non-traditional ways to help serve our members? What does networking look like, right? All of that. We want to inspire our chamber members with the products and services that we offer so that they keep coming back, right? So that they keep renewing their memberships. And we want to be valuable partners. So it really is a partnership. It's a relationship. This is not about being transactional, right? This is about creating solid relationships with your chamber members. It's all very, very important stuff. And now I want to take just a moment to talk about the internal focus, because your internal focus inside your chamber is just as important as the external focus. And it's the internal focus that we're going to spend time talking about today. So, you know, when you think about your internal customers, I always like to say you have external customers and you have internal customers. And so who are your internal customers? Well, they're your employees. Maybe you don't have employees. Maybe you are a volunteer-run chamber. You definitely have board members. You have board chairs. You have committee members, right? So all of those people are your internal customers. And so now the question becomes, with an internal focus, how do you make sure you're bringing the right people on board so that you can serve your members in the best way possible? How do you make sure that your board members stay engaged? How do you ensure that your volunteers are held accountable and that they're not taking too much on, and that you're successful in the projects that you want to launch and the things that you want to do with your members? How do you make sure you have a solid internal DNA so you get the external results that you are looking for? And so that's why today we're going to focus on what's going on internally in your organizational DNA and making sure you've got that solid foundation so that you really can serve your customers in the exceptional way that you want to be serving them, so that they can be, so you can be a valuable partner to them. So this is what we're going to explore together today. All right. So first thing we're going to talk about in creating this exceptional internal organizational DNA is adopting a growth mindset. And I absolutely love this picture. Think about things differently, because that's what adopting a growth mindset is all about. So it means that when you have a growth mindset, it means that anything is possible because you are constantly learning and growing. So everything you're doing as a chamber is all about learning and growth, experimentation, exploration, right? So think about the opposite of a growth mindset. The opposite of a growth mindset is a fixed mindset. And when you're coming at things with a fixed mindset, you may not get the external results that you are looking for. So this is why adopting a growth mindset is so incredibly important, right? So as I said, with a growth mindset, you're willing to explore, you're willing to experiment, you're willing to receive feedback, you're willing to give feedback, and you are open to suggestions across the organization, so across your chambers at all levels, to serve your members. And so how do you start adopting a growth mindset? It starts with you and your connection to yourself, right? So we're going to talk today a little bit about the human experience, because it's really important that we look at the human experience and how we are connected to all of this, so that we think, oh, this is how I adopt a growth mindset. Okay, so cultivating a growth mindset, right? So why should I cultivate a growth mindset? Why is it so important? Well, cultivating a growth mindset allows you to tap into your true potential. So, you know, we all have unique gifts, talents, and superpowers that we are meant to share with the world. And as we grow up, we learn to hide those things, right? So think about when you were a kid and you went out into the yard and you laid down underneath your tree and you looked up into the sky and you watched the clouds go by, and maybe you thought, oh, that cloud looks like a bear, or that cloud looks like a rabbit, or that cloud looks like a dragon, right? You allowed yourself to dream, and you thought about all of the things that could be possible for you to achieve. And as we age and get responsibilities and become adults, we tend to dream less. We tend to think about our potential less. We are homeostasis beings. We are beings that create habits and patterns, right? And so we tend not to experiment and explore as much as we did as we were children. And cultivating a growth mindset allows you to get back to that, allows you to tap into the inside and get back to, wow, what are my dreams? What are the things that I really want to do? What do I aspire? Makes me passionate, right? So, as humans, it is our human nature to want to be accepted, liked, and ultimately loved by the people around us, right? We are tribe people. We want to be accepted by our tribe. And so a lot of times we tend to hide the things that may make us feel vulnerable, that may make us feel like we're going to get kicked out of the tribe. So we get so incredibly focused on the talent and skills that we limit ourselves and others by trying to prove ourselves over and over again. So as we think about cultivating a growth mindset, I have a couple of questions for you to consider for today. So here's the first question I've got for you to consider. And please feel free to put, your answers in the chat box. I'd love to see what everyone is thinking about this morning. And I'd love to know if these questions are resonating with you, and if you're feeling, sort of the feelings that are going on inside your body as we go through this today. So first question for cultivating a growth mindset: do you waste time proving over and over again how great you are instead of using the time to get better? So this is really about us as humans and the human experience being so afraid of failure, right? We're all afraid of failure. Every single one of us is. We're afraid that we're going to do something wrong, that people won't like us, that people won't accept us, right? And having a growth mindset really looks at everything as it's a learning opportunity. This is an opportunity for me to learn and to grow and to get better. Next question to consider: do you hide your deficiencies instead of overcoming them? So this is really about vulnerability, right? Am I able to say, this is making me very uncomfortable right now. Wow, I am feeling embarrassed about what I did. I don't know if I know the answer to this, right? We all have human deficiencies. We all do. It's part of the human experience, right? So it's about being able to accept them, right? And know that, I have something I can learn here, right? I have the ability to overcome this. Of course I do. Next question to consider: do you look for people that shore up your self-esteem instead of people who challenge you to grow? So when we think about ourselves and the human experience and think about our energetic vibration and even our personality styles, we tend to surround ourselves with people who are like us, right? Those people who you meet and you're like, oh my gosh, I felt an instant connection to that person, right? And a lot of times it's because they have very similar ways in which they view the world, in which they do things, right? We are attracted to like things. So it's important when you want to have a growth mindset that you are actually putting people in your path that will challenge you to grow. So these are the people that are going to say to you, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. I'm interested in hearing more about what you have to say. Or, that's interesting. I look at this from a different perspective. I'm coming at this from a totally different area. That is what allows us then to have that growth mindset and get curious. And then lastly, do you seek out the tried and true instead of seeking people and experiences that will stretch you? So I know for me, a lot of times when I think, boy, if people knew, like when Akriti said to me this morning, and our expert this morning is Carrie, and I was like, oh boy, if all of these people knew that I don't consider myself an expert, right? Like, it's kind of like a little bit of the imposter syndrome, right? You know, if people knew how I was feeling about this certain situation, they would think that I wasn't meant to be part of this company, right? And yet, this is the part of the human connection, right? We all have these thoughts and feelings. All of us does. None of us is immune from any of this. And it's being able to embrace those so that you can say, wow, how am I stretching and growing? What are the things that I can do that's actually going to make me play an even better game that I'm already playing, right now? So, having a growth mindset and cultivating a growth mindset is about finding a passion for stretching yourself and sticking to it, especially when it's not going well. And this is such a key statement, right? Because think about times in your life when things are going really well for you and you're feeling like you are on the top of your game, right? Wow, I feel like I'm on the top of my game. I really have it going on. This is awesome. And then all of a sudden, something happens in your external world that manifests, and all of a sudden you start questioning yourself. Oh man, did I make the right decision? Did I do the right thing? Right? Oh man, am I good enough? Am I really good enough to do this? Right? And that's where a growth mindset can help you, because a growth mindset allows you to thrive during some of the most challenging times in your life. So think about the fact that things don't happen to you, things happen for you, right? The universe puts opportunities in our way for us to decide and choose who we want to become every single day. And adopting a growth mindset allows you to really embrace all of that instead of trying to push it away. Okay, questions, thoughts, comments about growth mindset before we move on to agile environments? The impact of COVID has definitely stretched me. Yes, absolutely. COVID has stretched me in ways that I never thought that I would be stretched. Absolutely. It has really changed so much of our everyday lives, both personally and professionally. Yes, a growth mindset is so incredibly important. Okay, awesome. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit as well about the agile environment. And I'm really curious from all of you who are here. I've got 47 of you today. That's really cool. All right, so the 47 people that are in the room today, I'm really curious. Who is familiar with the agile methodology? So yes, you can type in yes, I am. I know about it. I've used it. Maybe, kind of have some, so maybe, or no, I've never heard of the agile environment. So I'd love to see some responses. Yes, no, maybe, no. Okay, all right, awesome. No, never heard of it. Nope, okay. I have not. Okay, awesome. No, yes, okay, perfect. Thank you all. This is great, awesome. So the agile environment was actually adopted by technology. So people in technology, when they produced new software or they wanted to update a website, back in the day, they used a methodology called waterfall. And what that meant was that they gathered all of the requirements, they did all of their work, and then they presented their entire body of work, all finished, all done, to whoever they were doing their work for, to their customers. And it took them a really long time. And what they found was that by doing that, by the time they got all of everything done and presented to the client, a lot of what they did wasn't pertinent anymore. It wasn't relevant anymore because we move so fast in today's environment. And so the technology folks actually adopted what is known as an agile environment. And so agile is really just a blanket term that covers several project management approaches, okay? So, and the agile environment is actually being adopted by a lot of organizations, especially chambers, because it allows you to respond to changes and unpredictability with speed and dexterity. And so, you know, we talked in the beginning about being a digital leader and how important it is, you know, right now to embrace a digital workflows, right? Well, what is digital? Speed and agility, right? That's what the agile environment gives you. What is so cool about the agile environment is that there is a structure to it, right? So you need the guardrails of a structure, absolutely. It involves planning, it involves, talking with people. So it gives you that structure, but it also allows you to break the rules, bend the rules, create new rules so that you can create a fluid environment. It allows you to change direction instantly. That's what the agile environment is all about. So you can see why adopting a growth mindset and an agile environment within your organizational DNA is so important, because things move so quickly today. It allows you to have that flexibility. All right. So the agile environment will allow you to set aside your best laid plans and respond to the now, right? You know that. Your chamber member calls you up and says, hey, I have a need for this. Do you have any experience with that, or can you accommodate? And while your initial answer may be, gosh, we haven't, this is the first time we've heard of that, but this is really interesting. Let's talk more. Let's see if we can figure out how we can help you, right? That's a growth mindset, right? And that's also adopting the agile environment. So we know that speed is important because it means rolling out new changes and new ideas that need to happen very quickly, right? And so chambers can benefit from the agile environment because it values individuals and interactions. So this is really about building solid relationships with people, right? Being that valued partner, because it's about the individuals and the interactions within it. It also values customer collaboration. And we talked earlier about the external customer and the internal customer. And we know that both are incredibly important. So it allows you to have that collaboration, both internal and external. And it allows you and values the response to change, because that's what agile is all about. It's about putting something out there that's not perfect so that you can test it and experiment with it and explore with it and see the results that you get and make changes along the way. It's iterative. You're not holding on to things until it's perfect. You're able to get it out so that you can test it and explore and test your assumptions. All right, so how do you cultivate a growth mindset and an agile environment within your chamber? This all sounds really great, Carrie. Now, how do I do that? So taking a coach approach to your leadership can really be helpful and beneficial when you want to cultivate the growth mindset and create an agile environment. So think about yourself as a coach, and think about everybody in your chamber and everybody who is influential in your chamber as players on a team. And I actually have a question for everyone. So I'd love for everybody to be able to put this in the chat box too. I'd love to know, do you consider yourself a leader? So within your chamber, do you consider yourself an influencer and a leader within your chamber? Or do you feel that the leaders of your chamber are someone else at another level? So I've got a yes from Kim. Kim says yes, she considers herself a leader. I am a leader. I am a leader. Yes. Bryce says yes. Anthony says yes. This is awesome. I love this. Yes. Rebecca says yes. Yes from, yeah. All right. Melissa says yes. Excellent. Good. Phil says no. Phil says no. Okay. Excellent. Phil, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. To some extent, yeah, but my boss is the top leader in the org. Okay. This is great. Yeah. So we've got a lot of yeses, but we have some people who say maybe, sort of, kind of no. And I'm always surprised at how many people that I work with who may not consider themselves to be an influential leader within their organization. And when folks within your organization from all levels do not feel that they are part of the leadership, right, we're missing opportunities to really tap into the full potential of everyone who's part of your chamber. That's what a growth mindset and an agile environment will do for you. So So I would like every single one of us in the room today to look at ourselves as leaders, because we all lead every single day across all aspects of our lives, right? We lead our children, we lead our spouses, we lead our partners, we lead our friends, we lead people in our community and people that we work alongside. So everybody at all levels of your chamber, everyone is a leader. Everyone has the ability to be a positive, influential person within your organization. And that's because when we think about the role of a leader, your role as a leader is to help people be connected and engaged at all levels. Like when we think about the core purpose of a leader, that really is what a leader is supposed to be, right? Help people to connect and engage at all levels of the organization, right? And so now the question is, how do you do that, right? Well, we've been talking about the human experience, right? You connect with people on a human level. You realize that we all are human. We all have strengths. We all have areas of self-protection, right? And so a coach approach leader understands that the human aspect of the business is just as important to the strategic vision as profit, efficiencies, process, and getting stuff done, right? And so here's an interesting part about change, right? Because so often we think that if we can change our thoughts, we can shift our mindset, right? So when we talk about a growth mindset, we think, if I can just shift how I think, then I can shift my mindset. And what's interesting about that is it's really the behaviors. It's our behaviors that allow us to have a shift in the mindset. And it's understanding the behaviors that we have, the behaviors that others have, that allows us to be able to shift our mindset. And a coach approach leader leans into the feelings and the emotions of the human experience, and they leverage them by helping the people in the organization to shift their behaviors, and they lead by example. So thank you for your comment, Emily. Great comment about the coach approach to leadership. Yep, that's awesome. Perfect. So let's talk about the shift a little bit, okay? I call this the triad of transformation. So there's 3 areas where we as coach approach leaders can shift our behaviors to become more effective leaders. So we can shift from controlling to co-creation or collaboration, right? And again, we're going back to the human experience, right? Because every single one of us as a human, we are hardwired to survive. So we will think about, control is part of our DNA, right? Resisting is part of our DNA, and reacting is definitely part of our DNA, right? And again, this all comes about when things are going well, right? And we are in our comfort zone and we are feeling good and we're in the flow. Collaboration, allowing, and responding comes very easily. However, when we are in a stress situation, when we are challenged, that's when the control, the resistance, and the reacting comes up. And that's because as humans, right, we are hardwired to survive, and our primal brain takes over. And it actually shuts down the front part of our brain that controls our thinking and logic. So I want to look at some behaviors that are part of these 3 buckets. And so as we go through these, I'm going to encourage you to write down areas where you may be sensing that you need to make a shift. And again, part of this comes from our personality. So we have a personality style, right? Part of this is going to come from the experiences that we have in our life. So we all wear a backpack. We've been wearing it since the moment we've been born, and all of our experiences go into that backpack. So the experiences that are common sense to me may not be common sense to James, right? So we have to take all of that into consideration. James says, how do we work with other leaders who appear to be immutable and resistant to change? Yeah, that is a really tough one. And that's where, let's see, how do I want to say this? being vulnerable as a leader is important. And I said all of us are leaders at all levels. So being able to tap into your humanity and your vulnerability and having those discussions, right? This is about giving and receiving feedback, right? So having the discussion with the leaders who may be resistant to change to say, you know, I get the sense, or through your behaviors that I see, right? Because, you know, every idea we bring up, you seem to not want to embrace. I'm really curious, why is that? What is going on there? Because my sense is that it's got to do with their personality style, right? It's got to do with what they carry around in their backpack that may make them a little bit more resistant to change, right? Because if they are afraid of the unknown, resistant to change, they're going to be resistant to change. It's going to be very hard. So it's being able to have those open and honest and non-confrontational, safe, and creating a safe environment so that you can have those conversations. Great question, James. Thank you for that. Okay, so I do want to go through some of the behaviors. I've got 3 behaviors for each bucket. So control to collaboration, going from resisting to allowing, and going from reacting to responding. So think about yourself on a continuum, right? Walk the tightrope. Over here, you've got control, and over here, you've got collaboration. Depending on the behavior, you could be on the far left, or you could be on the far right. That's okay. You just then know where you need to make your shift, right? Your best practices are always on the far right, and your energetic shifts are over to the left. And so once you identify them, then you can start to say, okay, I've identified the behavior. Now, what do I want to do about it? Okay, that's the important part, right? So first up on control, going from control to collaboration, is being the expert. Okay, being the expert to being curious and asking questions. So Susan said, I need to learn how to process suggestions or recommendations from certain board members to respond rather than react. These individuals are resistant to change. Yes. So this is interesting, right? Because if we're shifting from control to collaboration, you're going to get curious, right? You're going to ask questions. Help me understand where you're coming from. That's interesting. Why? I'm curious to know why you think that won't work. I'm curious to know what your hesitation is, right? You are just going to get super curious and keep asking questions, right? Because what you don't want to do is hang on to the control and then people start digging their heels in, right? So it's about shifting your behaviors so that you can start asking curious questions and saying, wow, this has been a really interesting conversation. We're going to let this percolate for a while, right? Because we know with personality styles, some people just need time to process change, right? If you've got a personality style where you are afraid of the unknown and you need to just process things out, if you are trying to make a decision to an instant change, they're going to be very resistant to that. So you might say, we're gonna, this has been a great discussion. You know, I want to think about this. I always call it, I want to noodle it around a little bit, and then I'll come back to it. All right, so that's your first behavior. Second behavior from control to collaboration is forcing your point of view and moving to listening to understand, right? So think about when we listen, 9 times out of 10, we are listening to respond. When someone else is talking, we are already in our minds thinking about, what am I going to say? What am I going to say to this person? How's this going to go, right? Yes. So listening to understand, very important. Going from being a knower to being a learner, right? It's like thinking, oh, I have to be the expert here. Well, I am the expert. I know my content. I know it really well. I've taught it for a while, but I have a lot to learn. I have a lot to learn from you folks today, right? We have a lot to learn from each other. I always want to be a learner. It helps me grow as an individual, as a human, right? There's always things that I could learn. Now we move to resisting to allowing, right? We want to move from judgment to unconditional love. So I have an exercise for you. So tomorrow morning when you get up during the day, I'd love for you to keep track of how many times you judge yourself in a day. I know for me this morning, I judged myself 5 times before I even got out of my bed. And then I also noticed even yesterday how I was judging other people. And so again, it's all about the human condition, right? And our hardwiring, right? And we want to go from judgment to unconditional love. Wow, why is that person having such a hard time? Why are they so resistant to that change? Oh boy, wow, my heart is going out to them. This must be really hard for them. I wonder what's going on with them that is making this so hard. I wonder how I can help and support them to get through that, right? That's the going from resisting to allowing. Then we've got self-protection to vulnerability, right? So often we're in self-preservation mode. We see life through a filter, right? Because we are trying to protect ourselves. It is part of the human condition. And when we are able to lower the filter, we're able to come at it with vulnerability. Wow, the fact that these people around the table are resistant to change, this is making me really uncomfortable. I'm feeling really uncomfortable about this. Or, wow, I really wish that this was going better. I wish that this was going better, right? That's okay. That's part of being vulnerable. And when you are able to be vulnerable and show other people that you can be vulnerable, then they can be vulnerable too. Perfectionism, moving from perfectionism to experimentation, right? This goes back to the waterfall adage. We want it to be perfect. We can't roll it out until it's perfect, right? Well, but if we can roll a part of it out and we can experiment with it and explore with it and see how people like it, then we can make adjustments along the way, right? So I'm going to encourage you all to put on your lab coat, put on your goggles, do some experimentation, blow some stuff up. It's okay, right? That's where the magic is. That's where the magic is. Let's see, what else do we have? We've got going from obscurity to clarity, right? When you really think about your response, you're very clear. You can be very clear. You can take a moment. You can take a step back and say, wow, what's going on with me? Why am I reacting this way? I don't want to react this way. I want to be able to respond. It gives you some clarity because you're able to step back, step away from it, right? Looking is unhooking. You can step back from the emotional response to the emotional reaction and be able to respond. Going from disregard to consideration, right? We don't mean to disregard people. Our intentions are always really good. We're coming at it from a very good place, right? But people don't judge us by our intentions. They judge us by our actions, right? And so we want to take consideration with other people and say, wow, I want to take consideration into the fact that people may not process things exactly the way I do, right? So I need to be, think about how my response is going to impact other people. And then going from impulsive to intentional, right? Do I make impulsive decisions? Do I move quickly, right? Is that my personality? That's great, right? But not everybody's going to do that. And so how can you be more intentional about your response and the way that you are responding to people? All right, I want to talk a little bit about assessments because assessments are really great ways for you to understand yourself better and understand the people within your chamber better. I always say that assessments are the treasure maps to discovering who we really are. So they can help you understand. Oops, Kim's got a hand raised. Let's see. Kim's got her hand raised. Akriti, I'm not sure how to do a hand raise here. I'm out of my element here. Let's see.
Kim, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat or Q&A box.
Excellent. Thank you, Akriti. I appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm going to move on with assessments until I see that in the stuff either in the Q&A or the chat box, and then I'll answer questions as I go. So assessments can be used to help us understand who we are and why we behave the way we do. So this is here's the way that assessments can really help you understand. Assessments can help you understand your personality style, right? So understand your priorities and how you interact with the different personality styles, right? You may be somebody who moves fast, who may be a big picture person, or you may be somebody who's more analytical and who is questioning and skeptical. That's okay. We need every single personality style within our chambers to make really good teams, right? It takes everyone to be able to do that. Assessments can help you understand your strengths, right? How do you tap into your biggest strengths? And how do you be on the lookout for your blind spots? How do you find maybe hidden strengths that you don't even know that you have, that you may be hiding, right? They help you understand your mode of operandi, right? So where do you focus naturally, and what is going to be natural for you to be able to take risks and achieve successful outcomes? Assessments can help you with your character, right? Assessments help you create awareness about who are you, the best about who you are, right? So that you can build those positive relationships with others. And assessments can also help you with your team building skills. So it gives you insight into your team behaviors. So it takes the data from all of your team members, and it puts it all together, and it gives you a score of where you are on your team behaviors. So assessments really can be very helpful. I'm a big proponent of Everything DISC. Everything DISC is a Wiley brand. They're headquartered in Minneapolis. They do a great job of, they have a huge research department. They do a great job of updating their assessments. They've done a great job of moving to digital platforms. So if you have some money for professional development and personal development, I highly suggest assessments, because they can really be helpful to help you figure out who you are. So, okay. So now the question becomes, how does this all translate into my Chambers DNA, right? How do I put this all into practice, right? This is all really great stuff, but how do I put this into practice? And so we're going to start with culture, right? Because really that's all about your organizational DNA. It's all about the culture. So every organization, including your chamber, has an environment or a company culture all to itself. Now, you are either being very intentional about your culture, right? That's what we talked about. It's the aggregate behaviors. So you're either being very intentional about what your culture in your chamber looks like, or your employees, volunteers, and boards are creating the culture for you. Because your company culture is actually made up of little cultures. We, humans, right? As we realize today, and we know, we're all unique individuals. And so we all bring our little human cultures to this one big culture, right? We're all swirling around one another. And the disruption that we are facing really gives us a great opportunity right now to evaluate where our company environments currently stand. So my question for you is, how intentional are you being about the environment you are creating for your chamber? So please feel free to put your response in the chat box. How intentional are you being about creating a good environment for your chamber? I'm going to see a couple of responses before I move on, because I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say. Very intentional. Excellent. Thank you, Anthony. 100% intentional. Awesome. Rebecca says, I definitely don't think I'm doing enough. Thank you for sharing that, Rebecca. Thank you for being vulnerable. I appreciate you. Anyone else? All right. So I have three things that we're going to talk about today that can really help you figure out your culture. Susan says, I'd like to change my culture a little. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. All right. So here are three things that can really help you set an intentional culture for your organization. So first thing we're going to talk about is your mission. Okay. So I'm curious about mission statements. I love mission statements. I think they're fabulous. I think they're really good. My question for you is, how many of you know your mission statements? How many of you can know what they are? You can speak to them. You know them well. You speak about your mission statement a lot. You know it. And how many of you are like, yeah, I know we have a mission statement. I have it hanging up in my office. Can't remember exactly what it says, but I know the gist of it, right? And then some of us are like, yeah, I know we have a mission statement. I know we went over it. I've stuck it in a drawer. I got to find it, right? So Emily says our mission and vision blend together, and just a little of the mission statement from Anissa. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing any names wrong. I'm trying to get them right. Thank you so much for all of your responses. This is great. Teresa says, I included on our presentations and included in our brochures. That's excellent. All right. So now my next question is for you is, what do the words in your chamber's mission statement mean to you? What do all of those words on your mission statement, what do they mean to you? And then my next question is have you asked the people in your organization what your mission statement and what the words on that statement mean to them? And I ask this because if we think about behaviors, right, and we think about how we think, and we think about the human, right, the human experience, right, and we're taking the human experience into account. 9 times out of 10, people within your organization are interpreting your mission statement in very different ways. It's just, again, it's just part of our human DNA, right? Anthony says understandings between once a month people and everyday people is a challenge. Yes, absolutely, absolutely, right? And so it's really about helping people understand the words behind your mission. What does your mission mean? What are the behaviors that are attached to it, right? Getting clarity on the meaning behind the mission statement gives you a clear understanding of what the expectation is, and it creates a purpose, right? When you can talk about your mission statement and say, this is what our mission statement means to us, and ask people, what does the mission statement mean to you? What does the mission statement mean to you? Oh, that's interesting. You come at it from a totally different point of view than I did. I didn't think about that, right? So this is about getting people connected and engaged, right? Because when we as humans, right, we are hardwired for connection. We want to be part of something that is larger than ourselves, right? And so when you can have people connect and engage with a purpose that is larger than themselves, and they can see themselves in that purpose, they can understand their connection to the purpose, they become inspired. And what happens to people that become inspired, right? When you're inspired, you have this little pilot light in your belly, right? You got your little pilot light going on, and you're so excited and you're so passionate about things, and you can't wait to start, right? And so purpose allows us as humans to be part of a larger whole, something that is bigger than ourselves. And it gives us the inspiration to think bigger, to take bolder action, and to give each other the nudge to be accountable, which can really be a challenge for all of us, especially for us with volunteers and board members and employees, right? It's a challenge all around the board, right? So purpose inspires you to be on a mission and to live into a mission instead of just reading the words on a piece of paper. So I'm going to encourage you to really get that mission statement out and talk about it within your organization and see what the behaviors are behind it and get clarity so that you can get everyone on board, so that everyone feels like they are part of your chamber's mission. Okay. Next up is values. So part of your organizational DNA is being able to set company values. So what is a value? So a value is a belief that you hold so strong that you are willing to take action upon it in face of adversity. Like, think about that. It's something that is so important to you that even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you are going to take action on it. So each of us has values, personal values that we live into, right? And sometimes we tend to, sometimes we forget what they are, or sometimes we're not really clear, right? You can probably think of, if we sat here long enough, you could probably think of 3 things that are part of your values, right? Identifying and understanding the values that are important to your chamber allows you and everyone else in your chamber to walk your walk, right? Because if you and everyone else in your chamber knows what your values are and the behaviors that are associated with them, you have a very clear picture of what is expected of you. The same goes for your personal values. right? Getting clear on your personal values allows you to set boundaries for yourself and make sure that your behaviors are aligned with the organizational behaviors. It makes you notice when red flags pop up and you go, ooh, boy, that's a red flag. Where do I sit in my values? How's that affecting me, right? Is that tapping into my values or is that going against my values? So finding a language that resonates with everyone is really, really important. So recently, I actually did some work with a group of leaders, and they identified respect as one of their core values. So when I do value work with my clients, we go through this whole exercise of picking values, and then once we get to the top 3 values for the organization, I say, okay, folks, let's take a look and see what are the behaviors that are associated with the value. So if I saw you living into your value, like if you were actually physically doing something, what would it look like? What are the behaviors associated with it? And it was interesting because they chose respect as one of their values. And so when we started talking about behaviors, I had some leaders in the group that talked about personal respect, right? It was about standing up for themselves. They had respect for themselves, and they had respect enough to make their voices heard and to be known and be a forefront and be a leader, right? That was about respecting themselves. Other leaders in the group came at it from a very different point of view. They looked at respect for others as being open and listening to what other people had to say. And it's none of this is right or wrong, right? It's all good. It's just getting very clear on what the behaviors that we want behind the values. And so it opened up a really great dialogue between this group of leaders so that they could all get on the same page. And what they ended up doing is they ended up creating a values statement using each of their core values that incorporated things that were important to everyone, right? We got everyone on the same page. We got all the buy-in, right? So it's very important that you get behind the behaviors that are part of the values. So when everyone is clear on values, they're able to take the risks that may be needed to step outside of normal protocol and have the confidence to navigate the unfamiliar or uncharted, the disrupted. So I want to talk a little bit about binary because I believe binary is a near and dear subject to all of our hearts. I know it is for me, right? We as humans go to the binary, right, wrong, good, bad, right? Black, white. We want to put things in categories. It's how we make sense of things from a human perspective, right? However, none of us lives in the binary, right? None of us does. We're all on the continuum somewhere. We are very rarely all the way to the left or all the way to the right, right? We experience life differently because we're all unique with our own unique cultures, right? So this is why it makes it so important for you as a chamber to have a clear understanding of the values that drive your organization for your employees, your volunteers, and your board members, right? And so this way people are in a safe environment and they know, ooh, if a chamber member calls and asks me a question, I don't have to think, oh, boy, well, we don't really do things that way. I'm not sure what to say to them, right? They can step out and go, well, let's see, part of our values is respect for our customers. So I'm going to step out on a limb here and know that I'm going to be okay, right? They have the confidence to navigate that. Okay, so embracing a growth mindset, an agile environment, and taking a coach approach to leadership allows you to transform how you hire, develop, and manage and engage people. All right, so we're gonna stop talking about culture right now, and now, well, I guess it is part of your culture, right? How you hire, develop, manage, and engage with people is still part of the culture of your company, right? It's just how does a growth mindset, the agile environment, and taking a coach approach to leadership allow you to do that? So that's what we're going to talk about for the next couple of minutes. So finding the right people, right? So whether it's paid position, whether you want to secure a volunteer, or whether you want to put the right board members in place, it's really important that you have the right people in the right seats and you set them up for success. Because we now know that our internal customers are just as important as our external customers. And so we want to make sure that our internal customers are having a really, really great experience, Because when our internal customers are having a great experience, guess what happens to your external customers? They have just as good of an experience or an even better experience, right? It's just the way it goes. What did your mama always say? Treat people the way you want to be treated, right? All right. So when we're thinking about putting the right people in the right seats, let's talk about skills versus behaviors. Okay. So when you're reviewing resumes, when you're interviewing potential candidates or volunteers, or even thinking about putting new board members into place, right? Keep in mind that skills are important because we know that they are, but behaviors are even more important. So understanding a person's behavior is going to give you a really good insight into how they engage, interact, and perform within your chamber, right? How they influence, right? How they impact other people. So what behaviors do your internal customers need to have? So what behaviors do you want your employees, your volunteers, your board, your chairs, your committees, what kind of behaviors do you want them to have? Think back onto the growth mindset, to the agile environment, right? What kind of behaviors are going to help you create that really good culture where you're tapping into that human experience, right? Right? So think back to those behaviors. Also, another really good thing to do is observe people in your chamber, in other chambers, and in your networking groups, and even in your personal relationship groups who excel in their roles and exhibit the growth behavior that you would like to see, right? Really think about, wow, I really love so-and-so. I really love the way that they do things. What are the behaviors about them that I like, right? What makes me so drawn to them? What makes me have such a good experience with them, right? So when you identify those key behaviors, then you can use those behaviors to craft your questions that draw out the person's relative experiences, right? Again, concentrate on the behaviors and not the attitude. So I have an example for you here. So when we think about it, think about if you're talking with somebody, like, describe the actions and behaviors that you respond most favorably to, right? That's really going to tell you what their actions and behaviors are like. Or tell me about a time when you needed to be intentional about your communication. What did that look like for you, right? So you're really getting at the behaviors of people so that you can understand how they're going to fit into your organization. Also, one thing I wanted to say, utilize your staff and board members to review resumes and come up with handfuls of questions, right? Tap into people that can help you so that you can go into interviews and conversations with people so that you've got good questions ready for them to go. This is a really good one. So what happens if you come up on an interview and somebody says, I don't have any experience with that, right? Well, I actually love this question because you get a really good sense of a person's character, resiliency, and problem-solving abilities when they say, I don't have any experience with that. You know, you can tell if they're dancing around an answer, right? Or if they just come out and say, I don't have experience, right? And it's a really good time for you to ask them to share about a time when they were in over their head with a project and how they handled it, right? Did they go it alone or did they seek out support of their colleagues, right? Because if you want a growth mindset in an agile environment, you're going to want the person who's going to go out and seek the support of their colleagues, probably, depending on the situation, right? Or did they take time to think about it and gather information, or did they just push forward, right? You know, you may say, wow, I really am looking for somebody who's going to take time, who's going to gather the information, who's going to set a good vision, right? It's right. So it gives you that good insight into that person. If you're looking for a specific skill, ask detailed questions. If you are looking for somebody to hire a volunteer that's got experience with digital events, ask the questions about digital events, right? Ask them about those skills. If you don't know the questions that you should be asking, again, tap into your network. Find somebody who's got the expertise, tap into them and say, hey, I need to hire somebody. I'm not exactly sure what to ask. Help me, right? They can help you with those specific questions that you need to ask. Treat internal people like customers, right? We talked about this before, right? So your internal customers need to have just as good of an experience as your external customers, right? They need to understand what they need to know to be successful. Bring them in, make them part of your mission, right? So you want them to be super excited. You want them to have the right tools so that they can do what you've asked them to do. And you want them to have the overall understanding because you want them to be connected and engaged with your company. Get people connected to the mission and values. Make this a conversation that you have all the time, right? You want to be able to talk about your mission and values with everyone in the company. So have other people in your chamber talk about what the mission means to them, how it relates to the daily running of an interaction to everyone involved, right? We know that people come in and out of your organization. So being able to talk about this often and a lot is really important because number one, it keeps the conversation alive. Number two, it keeps people connected and engaged. And number three, it helps new people come on to feel the same thing that the people already there feel, right? It's focusing on that internal customer. So we've got about 15 minutes and I'm actually going to run through this pretty quickly because this is really, don't know if we're going to get to the goals, but when we think about team orientation, right, and we think about chambers and we think about the agile environment, a lot of stuff is done via teams. And so looking at the behaviors of a team, we start at the bottom, right, because we're building a foundation, right? And so it's super important that people on teams learn to work cohesively and collaboratively together. So we start at the bottom with trust. The next piece of the puzzle is productive conflict, because when we have productive conflict, then we can move up to commitment. When we have commitment, then we have accountability. And when we have accountability, we get team results. So I want to run through these really quickly because trust is so incredibly important. When we are genuinely transparent and honest with one another, we are able to build trust, right? We need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So if you think about the shift in behaviors, what shift in behavior do you need to embrace to create trust within your team? Vulnerability, right? You need to shift from self-protection to vulnerability. Being able to say, I don't know, I'm uncomfortable, I'm unsure, right? Being vulnerable builds a sense of belonging and will make people feel safe. Productive conflict. Once we have trust, we can then engage in the constructive debate of ideas, issues, and decisions and not hold back our opinions, right? When you know that you can put yourself out there and it's going to be okay, right? Then you can put your thoughts and ideas out there, even if you think, oh, people may not like what I have to say, but it's okay. I'm in a safe environment, right? It's okay. I can have the productive conflict. People are curious. They're open, right? They're receptive, right? They're allowing all of this good stuff to happen, right? So let's think about a committee example, right? So you've got, let's say that you at your chamber has a committee. Let's see, what do my notes here say? That is charged with coming up with a new program that will add value to your chamber members, right? You're on a tight deadline and you need to have a plan to present to the board in 3 weeks. This requires you to create something new that you've never done before, right? So you're definitely going to need trust, right? You're going to need vulnerability and you're going to need trust to be able to get that done, right? Absolutely. You are going to need to be able to have productive conflict, right? You're going to need to be able to have everybody get their thoughts and ideas out on the table. So if we go back to that example, what are the behaviors we need to shift? We need to shift from forcing our point of view to be open to listening to understand, right? And this goes back to the listening to respond example that I gave earlier, right? We want to take a step back and listen to understand, listen to other people's ideas and their points of view so that you can reconsider yours. Commitment. Commitment is about a group of individuals buying into a decision precisely when they don't naturally agree, right? So in other words, it's the ability to defy a lack of consensus, right? So let's go back to our committee example. We're in this committee. What do we need to do to embrace commitment within our team? What's the shift in the behavior, right? We want to go from shifting from disregard to consideration. when we give people the consideration and allow them to get their thoughts and ideas expressed, they will be more likely to commit to decisions even if they don't necessarily agree 100%. We as humans just want to have our ideas heard, understood, and considered and explained within the context of the ultimate decision, and then 9 times out of 10, we are good. Accountability. Expecting the leader to be the primary source of accountability is inefficient and it breeds politics, right? We really, when we don't look at ourselves as the leaders within an organization, we're expecting somebody else to make people be accountable. And when we consider ourselves to everybody in the organization to be influencers, we're all leaders. We all need to hold each other accountable. This is really hard, right? It's hard to do. So when we go back to the committee example, right, what shift in behavior do we need to embrace to create accountability? It's shifting from obscurity to clarity, right? Make sure everyone is clear about their roles and the responsibilities, expectations, and the results, right? It's getting below the surface. It's really getting clear. It's getting below the tactical, right? And getting clear on, all right, is this what you're going to be doing? I'm unclear about it. I'm not sure, right? Asking questions, getting clarity, right? So that you can get the results that you want. And then finally, we focus on team results, right? We need to set aside our egos and focus our energy on the results that will be best for the entity, right? So keep your scoreboard focused on your collective results. It's really, we as humans, we have a very strong and natural tendency to look out for ourselves. Remember, we are hardwired to survive, right? We will even look out for ourselves before our families and our own teams. It's just the natural part of who we are, right? So it's about setting aside your ego and focusing your energy on the results that are going to be the best for the entity. And that means that as individuals, we may have to make sacrifices sometimes. But when you're focused on team results, you're willing to do that. So it's really hard to put our individual wants and needs aside, especially when they are attached to the outcomes that we want, right? It's the attachment that is very hard for us to put that stuff aside. All right, really quickly, I'm going to run through setting goals because I think that this is really important because delivering more immediate feedback throughout the year and setting and massaging corporate goals is extremely, is actually expected now, right? Especially in the growth mindset and the agile environment, right? It's about giving feedback immediately, right? So gone are the days of yearly performance evaluations, right? It's about delivering more immediate feedback all the time. It's about having that open pipeline. So it's about setting SMART goals, all right? So when we think about a SMART goal is it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time bound, all right? That's what makes up a SMART goal. So I'm gonna give you an example of a SMART goal. So we will grow our membership by 5% by the end of Q4 2020, all right? So it's specific, right? Got to grow our membership. It's measurable, it's achievable, it's 5%, right? It's relevant because it's Q4 and it's time bound because it's saying by the end of 2020, right? That's how we're going to do it. So now when taking action on a goal, because this is what it's all about, right? This is, right, part of your organizational DNA and your mission is all about taking forward action, right? Are you getting the results that you want on the action that you are taking? So if you come up with this SMART goal and you say, well, I made the SMART goal, but you know what? I'm not exactly sure what I need to do, right? Well, when you don't exactly know what you should be doing, that's a planning issue, right? So you need more clarity to take action on that goal. So ask questions so you're clear on the actions that you need to do to achieve the goal. Like, is it more important for your chamber to grow its membership by focusing on corporate memberships? Or do you want to be more connected to the small businesses, right? So get some more clarity so that you're able to take action on your goal. When you know what to do, but you don't know how to do it, right? So thinking about going back to that goal again and taking action, right? This is a skills and practice issue. You need to hone your skills and then practice them. So going back to our example of growing the membership, right? Ask people in your organization to role play with you. So that you can practice your conversation and convey the correct message, right? This gives you an opportunity to refine your message. and up your skills. When you are trying to take an action on your goal and you are missing resources, this is an environmental design issue. So let's just say that you are trying to connect with potential prospects and you're unable to do that, right? Well, that means that you have to design your environment to be supportive. So leverage your personal and network relationships, tap into your board. Are you offering enough value to your members? Tap into existing members and find out, do a survey, do a poll, right? Figure out what's going on that's not allowing you to take the action. And lastly, when taking action on a goal, when you know what to do and you know how to do it and you're still not doing it, this is an inner resistance issue. And that means that you're tapping into your fears, right? And as humans, we all have fears. And so this is when it's really important to tap into the heart, into your goal. So tap into the happiness, the energetic vibration, the authenticity, the relationship, and trusting your inner authority. How is that goal making you feel on the inside? What's going on that you are unable to connect with that goal? Okay. Wow, I did it with 3 minutes left. So my last slide for you is a great quote by Lance Secretan. I've actually trained with Lance, and I'm one of his higher ground leadership leaders. And it's, we live under the illusion that organizations are them, when in reality, they are us. If we wish to work in evolved organizations, we must each be the first to start the journey. So I hope today has given you some tools to be able to start your organizational DNA journey. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear how your judgment exercise goes. Email me, interested in hearing about your journeys. Thank you for spending an hour and a half with me today. Akriti, thanks for having me. I'm very, very thankful.
Well, thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing your experience with us today. And thank you all for your participation and questions. And, I would, again, lastly, like to remind you all to register for our CLA Coffee Connection for November 17th. And my parting words to you is we will see you in our next program, which will be on Thriving Through Change and Disruption on November 3rd at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Please visit chamberleadershipalliance.org to register for our upcoming event, upcoming training with the Chamber Leadership Alliance and Carrie Balliet. Again, thank you all for your time this morning, this afternoon, and we'll hope to see you in our next training. Thank you all.